All right, it's time to start our second session of the day. First session was really interesting. I think the second one is going to be also interesting, slightly on a different topic, but also related. I'm Michel Suissa. I'm the manager of the Studio B&H division, professional division of the company. For those of you who were not here for the first session, I'll be quick. We offer technology solutions to any market. Virtual production is a market we decided to enter about 3.5 years ago, and as a result, we've have a lot of connections in that industry. A lot of friends. Here, 3 of them are here with me today, and we decided this year. Last year we talked about technology more than anything else. This year we decided to talk about the people behind virtual production, which is really critical. No project gets done without the creativity of talented artists, so that's really important to note. In a conference that's very focused on technology, we have to talk about people, right? So today we're going to talk about what does it take, to create good content, for virtual production. What does it mean? What are the tasks? What are the skills that are required? And how do you get to a point where you have assembled a team of artists that are entirely qualified to put together the project that you envision? So, with me today, I have AJ, who is a good friend of mine, who owns CEO and whatever, founder of Orbital Virtual Production. If you don't know Orbital, you should go to their site. Their work is absolutely, completely remarkable. State-of-the-art, innovative, creative, cinematic. Okay, and I can go on. And then I have, what? Yeah. I'll say a few more words later, okay? Alex is a dear friend of mine. We've worked on a number of initiatives together, trade shows, conferences. We put together virtual production walls. We've explained to people how to make it work, and this and that. Alex just started a new initiative, and that's why he's here, because I think it's really, really interesting. He has a new approach to create an environment for anything that is a three-dimensional plates for car processing shots. That can be extrapolated to other things. We'll see some of his work. But essentially, if you want to put someone in a vehicle and you want it to look like it's 100% real in the environment, he is your guy. And then I've invited Craig. Craig's a good friend of mine, ESC cinematographer. The reason why I've invited him is because he does a lot of LED volume work, and it's really important that we emphasize the nature of the similarities of properly lighting an environment for virtual production or any other location for that matter. There are rules, to follow, and I think his experience is going to be invaluable. I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions specifically about his work. But it's really critical to understand that the role of the cinematographer is as important, if not more, in certain instances in virtual production as it is in traditional production. So I'm going to start with you, AJ. Give us a little bit of your background on how you got to virtual production, and the start of Orbital.
Yeah, so, I was in production for 25 years, gray hair. A lot of it just physically in production, so everywhere from being a PA in development all the way on stage to eventually becoming a gaffer and a DP briefly. Then I got into visual effects because I was really into visual effects. I worked for New Deal Studios. We did Interstellar and a couple other big movies, Dark Knight. And really just kind of loved the convergence of the two worlds. And when I saw this happening on Mandalorian, I was actually helping a friend make some miniatures that were being scanned in to be environments on the show, and got to see firsthand what a volume looked like, kind of when nobody knew what that meant. And it just kind of took my breath away. I thought, wow, this is the future. And so I started talking to everybody who worked on the show, and to a man, everyone said, no, this is a nightmare. This is the worst thing ever to work on. And I was like, why? And so asking a lot of questions and just trying to figure out what were the problems they were having. And, they basically invented this, system. And none of this technology was made for this. So they were cobbling it together and doing the best they could with what they got. And for what they were doing, they got amazing stuff out of it. And, they do have a lot of visual effects in there that help. But, I just really focused on the problems that people were having and said, how do we fix that? So I started talking to different manufacturers of panels and tracking systems and all the things, required by virtual production, and just said, hey, can we try to work on making this stuff better for people in production? And, had people say yes. And so we started building sort of better systems. And eventually we had kind of a small setup that, we were doing some small testing in with sort of our second version of what we called, version 2 of virtual production, and got some investors and kind of a TV show, and blew up into a much larger company now. And one of the things that we still hold true to is that, we hire people mostly that are filmmakers, and then we teach them Unreal Engine. We teach them the stuff that they need to do as an operator, because it's more important that they understand production. It's more important that they understand what someone like Craig is going to ask for on set and how to translate that. Because essentially what we're trying to do is create a canvas for you to be an artist, essentially.
That's it. So the question goes to you. How did you get involved into LED volume work from your, if I say quote, traditional ways, traditional production?
So I got into it because I shot a film back in early 2021, in the very early days of what we now call virtual production. Right when basically everybody was excited about Mando and people were building things all over the place. And my experience was horrible. Every single thing that you could have go wrong on a volume happened to us. And we extended the production by a few days. We worked lots of many 20-hour days. It was lots of stuff was kicked off to post. By the end of the project, there were more visual effects shots per minute than Avengers Endgame. So it was a total disaster, but I loved the idea of it and being able to get off of green screens and blue screens and work with something more real in camera. And so I was determined to learn as much as I could about all of the systems, where the failures were, and then never repeat it again. And so I've done a lot of that. I don't know everything, but I know enough to be dangerous. And now I teach at ASC masterclass on virtual production and lots of other entities like the Television Academy, things like that, and continuing to do my own work in production, in my own productions. But it's been quite a journey, and I think education is key. And that's what we're trying to do with stuff like this, is really spread the honest truths about virtual production and what it's good for, what it's not, that sort of thing, and how you can do it really well for your own productions.
Alex, so I've seen you do so many things, in virtual production and other things, but now your new venture came out of a need in virtual production to have an environment that's easily repeatable, that is completely controlled, that allows the level of creativity that is important for, a crew, a director, a creative director, a DP to actually create their content. So tell us a little bit about how you got to creating scene plates.
Yeah, so I started doing virtual production, 5 years ago. I was actually doing virtual production training for United Airlines. I worked for this company based in Chicago, and we were doing VR training. And pre-COVID, I was like, we could use this LED wall technology, and our offices in Chicago were across from United, to we could shoot the executive team in front of an LED wall and save them a lot of time and a lot of money. And they have the money. We could just build the stage. And we didn't do that, but we messed around with virtual production, and then I decided I want to get into the entertainment. I want to go back to the entertainment industry. I want to get out of training, and so I went all in. I was already using Unreal for VR training stuff, and I started going all in on Unreal, and I started sort of identifying some of the biggest challenges in virtual production, and some of the the most driving shots in virtual production is a vast majority of what actually happens, and it makes so much sense from a producer standpoint. You have a car, and if you're going to shoot, on a process trailer, you're going to block out some roads, you're going to put a car on a trailer, you're going to hire a bunch of extras, a bunch of stunt drivers to drive extra cars. So there's a very clear cost savings from a producer standpoint. It's like, oh, this is going to save us money. And same if you're going to do it green screen. If you're doing green screen, now you have green reflections, refractions. It's transparent. You can see green everywhere. And so I was, probably 3 years ago, I started really trying to figure out how to do car process. And I started by capturing plates. It was like, oh, we really need 360 plates. People were doing traditional plates, but no one was really doing fully 360 seamless plates. So if you have these big wraparound volumes, to be able to shoot in any direction, I was like, this is going to be a big deal in the future. And so I started there. I was really frustrated with the quality I could get from 360 cameras, and with with cinema cameras, the stitch was going to be impossible. It was going to be very expensive. So then I went down the Unreal path and started making real-time car process, and I realized that, as we've already heard from the last panel and already a little bit on this panel, it's like productions don't work that way. They don't have most of them don't have months of prep to like build this customs, because even though you can, with Unreal Engine on the day, you can change all this stuff, it takes at least weeks to prep these scenes properly so that you can do these things live at the stage. And almost always, it doesn't matter if it's a massive feature film, big TV show, small music video, it's always like, hey, we have the shoot next week and we need this. And we're not even going to make a decision on it until like 2 days before, and then we're going to change our mind the night before. And so I realized, like, okay, even going down the Unreal Engine real-time path, I'm going to have challenges. I'm going to have, it's not going to solve most of the problems. And so that's when I really started going down pre-rendered content. So what we do is 16K and above. We can do up to 24K resolution. We don't use Unreal Engine. We use a high-end offline render engine called Octane Render. And we create what I'm obviously biased when I say it, a lot more photoreal driving plates than what Unreal can give you, but they're also a lot more customizable than if you were to go out and shoot something. If you go out and shoot some plates, that is what you got. You're not going to say, oh, you know what, this is great, but can we speed around this car? Can we change that car from red to... You're not going to do that. So that's sort of I sort of identified that as a problem. I went through many, many iterations of that and came up to what we have now. And really, we were building a library, so it's a library of content. And the real goal is that productions will actually just license whatever is already on our existing library. But already, and we've already seen it on a project we worked on last month, everyone wants to customize them because they can. It's like, oh, this is great. This is kind of the best of both worlds. It's not live action captured, but we can change it. It's not Unreal Engine, but it looks more real. So we have a good challenge ahead of us of trying to figure out how to essentially build two different companies. One that focuses solely on customization, because that's going to be a big, heavy task. Every single project is going to be like a whole new VFX show. And how do we continue to grow the library, which for me, as a business owner, I'm more excited about. I want a product more than, I thought I was getting out of the services business. And now I'm like, oh, I'm right in the thick of it now. So, yeah, that's the long answer.
So, AJ, because the nature of your work is so cinematic, and you've engaged the filmmaking community, could you tell us what's really essential for people who would like to be part of the virtual production process on the creative side of things? Can you tell us who are the members of your team whose skills are completely specialized, and which ones on your teams have skills that can be translated from existing knowledge that they have? Like, for example, can a VFX CG artist become a VAD? Can someone who does After Effects design can become, an Unreal storyboard artist? How do you see the level of creativity that each discipline prior to virtual production, how does that translate or being modified for virtual production?
Well, I mean, if you're a visual effects artist or you work in Maya or any other 3D program, it's pretty easy to switch over to Unreal Engine. It's very simple. There are also other ways in which you don't have to use Unreal Engine. Chaos just put out something they call the Arena, Project Arena, which I think you can work in Houdini or Maya or whatever you want and get it straight out to the wall. It's not quite there yet, but it's real close. I think that'll be a competitor of Unreal pretty soon. And so then you can work in the software that you're used to. I would say that the most important thing as with, I think, any position in film, television, visual effects, or anything, is understanding lighting and how lighting makes things look more realistic if you do it right, and how it makes it look more cinematic, right? And how you can find those ways of cheating the fact that the background is not real. How do you put physical items in the volume to figure out, oh, well, if I double that in digital space, then that makes this feel like it's connected, and all of those kinds of things. I think just creativity in general is the important thing.
Yeah, I'm going to you now. Lighting. So one main question, for you is, have you had to relearn your craft, or was it just a simple way of adapting what you already knew to create content that you're happy with, that you feel is visually compelling when in front of an LED wall?
That's a great question. So yes and no. So the fundamentals of lighting are no different in the virtual world than they are in the real world, other than that you have to ensure that you can blend the real world foreground stuff with what you're doing in the virtual world, and that's incredibly important, because if you don't make that blend work, you're gonna shift all sorts of costs to post, to fix things, and it's just not the fundamental process of in-camera visual effects doesn't work if the blend isn't working on the day. So, but as far as bringing light through a window, putting a little fill over here, putting a top light in, whatever, all that stuff is exactly the same as what I do every single day. It's just that now I'm working with visual effects artists in order to enact what it is that I'm doing, instead of with my gaffer and my key grip. Now we still, of course, have to, once I'm down that road with the visual effects artists, I also have to work with my real key grip and gaffer to ensure that the stage that we're on, the rig that we're doing, we're able to recreate what it is that I'm doing in the virtual world there in the physical world. The fun thing about the virtual world is you can do all sorts of things. You can break physics with light, and you can't do in the real world. So like I could set up a hard Fresnel source, point source over there, and I could have it affect these two guys and not us. The light literally stops right here. Or I can make a 100 by 100 soft top light and then make it invisible. There's all sorts of really cool things that I would highly encourage anybody who's interested in going down this road and lighting in visual effects. Try to get a visual effects lighting class. Somebody sit down with you and inform you about all the different sources of light that you can create, because they're called different things. There's a point source, which is a Fresnel basically, and soft lights and stuff like that. But learning that vocabulary between the two, because we speak movie, they speak game engine, and so learning that way to communicate back and forth, but then also all the fun things that you can really do with it. It was super helpful for me going into my first experience, because it's incredibly intimidating to do this the very first time, and the more that you can have experiences like that, it's going to make it a lot better for you.
Was the language a barrier? The language of traditional cinematography for you versus the language of a CG artist or VFX artist? It's actually essentially an extension of your team of electricians or gaffers?
Enormously, yeah. There's a huge communication barrier there between the camera nerds and the computer nerds. We fundamentally speak two different languages, and generally you're going to have one primary point of contact between the two teams. Usually that'll be your visual effects supervisor, virtual production supervisor. In some smaller setups and stages, it might be just the engine operator. But that person is incredibly important to be able to translate between the two and say, this is the filmmaker's intention, here's how we're going to accomplish it, and vice versa. The information has to go both ways. But you have to have somebody who knows how to read a script and say, oh, this is probably how they're going to do it, and then anticipate the things that need to be done. Because not everything you can just willy-nilly do on the day. You have to do a lot of work when you're working on Unreal beforehand, and so you have to have somebody who's a filmmaker and also a game engine person.
So Alex, you're a little bit of everything, right? But when you work on set and you have a cinematographer next to you, adjusting the work that you've created. Any language barriers? How do you communicate? Let's say, I want the sun to be glowing a little bit, and it needs to go down on the horizon lower, and then we need to bring exposure higher, and we need to a different fall off or the depth of field, in your scenes. How do you make that interpretation in cinematic language when you create your plates?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I actually do, so specifically when we create our plates, I actually work a lot with my friend Matt Ryan, who you guys all know, and he was the DP for the shoot we did in December. He's a good friend of mine, and he's somebody I trust lighting-wise and otherwise. So I actually work a lot with him, and he's been a big help for me and give me a lot of advice, not just like how to light something cinematically, but like how am I going to shoot this? If I were going to shoot this plate on the volume, what would I do? And how would I do it? And there's a lot of things that you don't think about if you're not a DP of like, oh, I'm just going to put the sun way up here. And it's like, well, I would never shoot from there. I would want to shoot, but I can't shoot here because there's going to be a wall there. So I'm going to eventually put up a source here, and we're going to do this and do that. And so I actually do consult with cinematographers about how would you light this? How would we do it? A lot of times with our last shoot and with a few potential upcoming shoots, that at least relight the scene with the director DP. So we'll take our plate, we'll show them what it is, we'll go into the 3D software, and we'll at least relight it. Because a lot of times you want something specific. It's a golden hour, it's this, it's that, whatever the case may be. But I do have a filmmaking background. I was a cinematography major in film school, and I was a photographer before that. And so I spoke that language before I started learning game engines, and I do think that it served me very well. I think that is definitely one of the more challenging things for some stages, to communicate to the DP, to the director, and understand what they say. We went through this recently with Simplemente in Mexico City. I won't say anything about the project, but I do felt like because I have that background, I also have color. I do a lot of color correction as well as a colorist, so I do understand that language a little bit. One of the first things I was like, oh, we need to put the cart like as close to the stage as possible. I don't want to be on the back, brain bar way in the back, no one can see us. I want to be up on the stage, and I need to be right next to the DIT with a color calibrated monitor. So any decisions we're making color-wise, we're not just using some other monitor, we're using them, and I'm constantly asking for feedback and talking with the DP a lot, and really like, trying to get ahead of what she wants, trying to understand, trying to translate what she wants into what we can do at the stage level, on the media server level, because even if it's like, oh, I want it to be more blue, or I want it feels too warm or something, there's a few different ways you can achieve a similar color. So I do think having that background has served me well. And also the other thing that I mentioned too is that a lot of times people with the game engine background don't even understand the hierarchy of, or even the chain of command of a film set, and also like where they line up in that chain of command. And I have been on sets, on not real stages like AJ's, but I've been on a set where the Unreal Engine artist is telling the DP that, no, this is how it works. First, I'm going to set the lighting, and then you're going to match it. And it's just like, I walked over, and after DP walked, I was like, that's not how this works, dude. Like, that's not how this works. He's your boss, for one. You can tell him what you can't do. You can say, like, look, I can't do that, or I don't know how to do that, or that's going to take too long. He needs to hear those things, or she needs to hear those things. But you don't tell him, if he's saying, I need you to do this, you do that. That is your job. Your job is to do that. And if he's saying he wants the light to come from this side, you do that. And then you adjust to him, because he has physical limitations, for one, and also he knows what he's doing. He's been doing this, much longer than you have been alive. So you listen to his experience and you work with him. Even in that case, it wasn't intentional. It just literally has no idea of set dynamics or the chain of command, and I don't know if that's going to change. I would have thought by now, like, even at these shows, I would have thought that, oh, well, the show itself should have a virtual production supervisor. Because if they're going to shoot it, especially if they're going to shoot at different stages, like the show should have their own virtual production supervisor so that there's a consistency between the stages, between this, that, and the other. And it's difficult because it is two worlds colliding. And the two worlds they're opposites. And it's amazing and it's fun. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm in it. It's so fun having the collision of both of these worlds. It's fun having all these challenging problems. But it is a challenge.
So AJ, how do you manage the collision challenge?
Well, that was why I got into it to begin with, because I like him, I was just thinking, oh, this is going to be great. You're going to put a computer nerd and a camera nerd in the same room, and they're going to just fight it out? Like, what's going to happen? Like, I don't think that's a good idea. I could be that buffer person, right? And so that's how I started. No, I think for us, a lot of it comes down to hiring properly, you know? I think early on, there were very few people that really understood Unreal Engine, which was the only thing at the time to use. And so your personality didn't matter as much as your skill set. And on a film set or a TV set, personality goes a long way, you know, and it's real important to get along with people and understand the chain of command. And I don't care who it was, you know, if that was somebody on my stage, they'd be fired immediately. Yeah. So, like, you know, for us, it's like people can come in and maybe they don't have the full set of tools or skill set that maybe an operator needs. But if they have a great attitude and they have that mindset of wanting to learn, to me that's more important because we have to learn every day. This engine that we use changes all the time. And then we change engines. And then we're using sim plates. And then, you know, it's like you're constantly, now AI, we're having to deal with all this constantly changing technology. So that mindset of like, oh no, you're never done. You get to keep learning. That's what I think everybody at Orbital loves. And that's what I hope we keep having, is that sort of mindset.
So there's a more or less a new category of skills or a discipline that appeared a few years ago in virtual production. That's what's called the VAD, right? The Virtual Art Department, the Virtual Art Director. What's your experience in integrating the role of a VAD into the process of creating the content? How key is that position? I know, AJ, you've had a lot of innovative work, you know, with other companies, you know, who have pioneered, you know, the role of a VAD on set. How critical is that? First, can you explain it a little bit, and then how critical has it been for your work? And then I'll extend that question to the other guys.
Yeah, I mean, not even just on set. In all the pre-production of, you know, virtual art department, you really need to have, number one, a process that people can understand and know how to follow and know when they have to make approvals for different aspects of different things. One of the things that we sort of early on started to hear bitching and moaning about was that process and how, you know, there's a period of time where things go in a black box and no artist gets to look at it because it's being built out, and then it comes out the other end and they go, wait a minute, this isn't what I asked for, or it's not, I want you to change this, and they go, well, there's no time, sorry, you got to shoot, you know, in 2 weeks. So our whole goal was like, how do we make that process more transparent and make it so that we're never putting virtual art in a box that no one can see. And so we're now partners with Narwhal Studios, and Narwhal actually, they've done 7 seasons of Star Wars television, and you name it, they've been involved in it. They basically developed the virtual art department process. And so going directly to them and saying, look, how can we make this better? And a big part of that was the collaboration with whoever's operating the stages. And a lot of what we do, we obviously have our headquarters in downtown LA, but most of the TV and film that we do is off-site. So we'll take all of our gear wherever we're going to shoot, wherever the tax credit is best for the film. And so being able to have that collaboration with the VAD, both in pre-production and on set, one, it allows for an easy handoff, because there's never really a handoff. We're always working together, even through the last day of production. And separately of that, it's the, you know, the aspect of like, well, you're never going to be in a black box. If production designer says, hey, I want to take that stool and put it in front of the LED wall to see what the VAD looks like right now, see if that color matches, you know, show it to me, we can do that. And it's a lot more of a collaborative process. Like, well, you can't touch the stage until you're paying for it on the days that you're shooting. No, we want it to be as collaborative as possible, and I think that process is going to start getting mirrored on other projects that are not ours, because that handoff is so important.
Correct. Any experience with a virtual art department into creating an environment that you need to light?
Yeah, definitely. So a couple things. First of all, testing, super important. Test, because all sorts of things happen in volumes and inside cameras that you don't necessarily, you can't judge with your eye. You have to get a camera and the light from the volume and the load all working together in order to, you don't want to do that just willy-nilly on the day and start from, oh, we're going to start now. But anyway, yeah, so important to point out that, first of all, when we say virtual art department, that is very specific to Unreal and game engines. And virtual production is much, much more than that. There are all sorts of different iterations, 2D plates, 2.5D plates, graphic elements, things like that. But specifically for a virtual art department where you're building a load, really the process is no different and the team is no different than your physical art department. And it's the physical art department that actually drives the train, right? So it's the production designer that you're working with who's giving direction to the virtual art department. This is what we're going to do. It's not the inverse of that. Same with the DP. It's the DP who's guiding the artists on how they're going to light it. And then throughout the process, the production designer and I are working together. We're figuring out, what does this set look like? And this is no different than any time we start up a regular TV show, right? We're building a set, and we're figuring out how we're going to light it. We're talking to the director, how we're going to block this scene, and making sure that the space that we're creating provides the necessary elements for us to give the director what they need to make it look like what the director wants, and what we're all collaborating towards, and make it so that I'm able to light it and shoot it in a way that's going to satisfy everybody's needs. So again, the virtual world is being guided by the physical world. Even if it's 99% virtual and 1% foreground elements on your LED, it's still the physical team that drives the virtual team.
Say, Alex, your work with virtual art department, are you the VAD for what you actually create based on the script or the direction or the creative brief that you get from either a production company, or a corporate entity, or a director or an agency? How does it work for you?
So I've done a lot of stuff that wasn't car process in the past. Now on car process, usually there's not a ton of art department. We did actually, even when we were shooting at Orbital last month, there was a really cool trick that now is so obvious, and now I think of all the time, that the art department did that was really cool, which is that the windows were tinted, even though the DP was like, you can't get tinted windows, you have to get a vehicle that doesn't have tint, and they got one with tinted windows, and all windows are tinted, to be fair. All windows have some tint to it. But what they did was they rolled down the windows, they cut out plexiglass that fit the window perfectly, and for the trunk, it was a hatchback, like a SUV thing. They just opened the trunk all the way up. They sort of built like a bottom part, and then they just put a window back there, like a clear plexiglass window, and allowed us to do, to operate a lot more freely. So there is sometimes art department is somewhat involved in the car process, but in general, they're not really. There's not a lot of props that there's going to be like between the volume, and there's not a lot of props you have to match on the set to the virtual background, which is the more challenging, one of the more challenging things for the art department and virtual art department to work with. But yeah, that process is always fascinating. And when you have a great art team that can match, that either in advance they say these are the things physical set things we're going to use on set, match these, or it works the other way around. However that works. That is like the magic. When you can blend those two seamlessly, that's really when it all ties itself together. And we did see that. There was I don't remember the name of the show, but it's a Discovery TV show. They did a bunch of 2.5D AI art stuff with the Simulate Live effects, and I helped set up the pipeline for the 2.5D workflow. And it was really impressive how quickly they moved and how quickly the art department would change things. And they were doing a really good job of going the opposite way, of going, okay, those trees are a little bit darker. and the Gen AI stuff that they made, and we'll just make our physical trees darker right now, really quick. And so, it's the thing that is, I think we all love about filmmaking is the collaborative process. And when you have like really high level people, it doesn't matter what budgets are, high level functioning people in the art department, cinematography, VAD, whatever, it just makes everything great. When 5 people can solve the same problem in different ways, and they're all working towards that, you get a much better result than like, hey, you have to match this, and that's the way it works. It's like, well, we can go both ways. We can light these things different to match it. We can paint this darker. We can do everything. But yeah, the art department is huge in blending those worlds. It's a very important thing. And to me, that's usually the biggest separator from like low budget virtual production and mid and upper level budget production. A lot of times low production, they think they can just show up, no art needed. It's just all virtual. It's just all the background, right? And it's like, you can do that. For certain shots, you can do that. Car process lends itself well to that. But pretty much any real virtual production, you need a mid-ground section between the wall and the actors. So anyway.
One thing I want to add real quick, so that ties on to both of those. So there's a million different forms of stages and walls and volumes and lighting scenarios and rigging and all sorts of things. And there's a lot of reasons why you would go to, we don't have time unfortunately, a lot of reasons why you would choose one facility over another. But one of the things that I personally like best and have found most successful is when the facility has a relationship with a virtual art department. It's much more, because there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that I'm not privy to, fortunately, but a lot of optimization that's happening, and a lot of consultation of, well, this is going to work better, this plugin's going to work better on this stage than that, or we need to achieve this particular frame rate on your laptop in order to be able to do that on the display or on the wall, those sorts of things. So when that level of communication and trust is there between 2 different vendors working towards the same goal, I've had much greater success personally.
So AJ, a question for you about the general creative process. Since virtual production is still, a young world, do you see gaps or shortcomings into how a virtual production is being approached creatively that need attention? And what would those points be if you were to recreate your dream workflow for how virtual production is being done? What would change compared to what actually is being done today?
For starters, the point at which they reach out to us. Right? I think a lot of times they come very late in the process, and then they're like, it costs that much? It's like, well, if you thought about this from the beginning, you would have budgeted for it. So a lot of what we've been doing is trying to get that reach out point much sooner. That's why we now have an agent, because we're like, hey, if we can start talking to these people when they're budgeting for a movie, it would be even better for us, whether we get it or not, as long as somebody is going to get it. I think that we love when people just say, look, I don't know anything about this. Can you help me figure this out, whether it's from a budgeting standpoint or from a creative standpoint, or how do you see this creative process working? Who should I talk to? All that kind of stuff. We love that. Sometimes people will come in and already have preconceived notions about what it is that are not correct, and we can attempt to correct it, or we just have to go, okay, I guess this is how it's going to work this time, and we're going to have to pick up the slack wherever it kind of falls. But I'd say that the best way to approach it from a creative standpoint is, what do you think? How are you guys feeling about this? Do you think it's going to look real? What is the goal at the end? Does it need to look real? And really just listen to the people who do this a lot. I think we've told people several times, I don't think that's the right solution for this particular thing. This is a great magic trick. It's a great solution for a lot of things, but it's not for everything. So just knowing when to use it and when not to, I think, is important. We can help with that.
Alex, what questions would you like to be asked before starting your project?
What question would I like to be asked before starting a project? Yes. I'll tell you which question I don't like being asked. No, I'm kidding. That's a great question.
How low can you go?
Yeah, exactly. That's yeah. Can you do this for $1?
I don't have a budget. Can you do it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think for me on our end, what is much easier for us to do is start from something that's, for instance, if it's a plate we've already created, it's much easier for us to customize that. So if someone comes to us and says, we want this thing that you have not created yet, we want something completely new, and they're like, oh, can you give us a number for that? It's like, now it's a complete 100% VFX bid. It's like, okay, well, now we have to go back and go, okay, well, these are the assets we have to buy, these are the assets we have to build. So for me, what I love is going, okay, but is there a plate in our library that's close to what you're looking for? Oh, actually, yeah, this one is really close, but we need it to be 4 lanes, and we need there to be twice as much traffic, and there needs to be, half the trees, and the sky needs to look different. It's very easy for us to then budget that, because we're starting from a known place, we already have a scene, and we already have these assets, and we can go, okay, it's a period piece. Okay, now, do you have reference photos? Which era is this? Which cars do you need? How specific do we need to get? So I like starting from and even if it's not our stuff, I like to start from reference, visual reference or otherwise. Like, can you point me? Can you give me video reference? Can you give me a Google Maps location pin to what location you like? Those sorts of things.
So, a question about production in general. Filmmaking always relied on the work of storyboarding. Does that still exist in your world? Do you actually rely on someone boarding a scene or a sequence before you actually shoot it, or has that sort of been translated directly into creating low-end versions of images that are actually going to be projected, or is it a combination of both? Do you create your storyboards in Unreal? Do you use AI as one of the tool sets to actually create imagery that sort of resembles in a style book, or do you still go to a traditional person who actually is going to hand draw your storyboard?
Take that, Craig? Sure. Yeah. It's again, it's no different than a normal production. Sometimes you do storyboards, sometimes you don't. I've worked with storyboard artists in a virtual production scenario where they're still hand drawing stuff because I think it's inherently, for some directors especially, a more creative and controllable process than trying to create lots of iterations of things if they're an experienced director and they know what it is sort of that they're going for. For the vast majority of the stuff that I've done on LED volumes, no, there's no storyboards. It's more like just like building a set. You build a set, you have a general idea of what you might want to do, sometimes a very specific idea of what your blocking is going to be, but you design it so it gives you flexibility in order to stage the scene as necessary on the day.
AJ?
Yeah, the tool set exists to use it for storyboards if you want. I think the thing that we always tell people is you can use this as much or as little as you want. And especially in pre-production, where it's kind of the least expensive part of virtual production, you should use it as much as you want. And so there are times where you'll do a location scout with a DP and a production designer, and we've kind of got the set blocked out, and they've got little actors in there. And yeah, you can actually output storyboards from that if you want. They may not be as creative or awesome as something that a storyboard artist can create. One thing I've seen sometimes, though, is that sometimes people who draw storyboards, can get some really amazing looks that aren't physically possible to get. So it's like, well, the shot doesn't look like that. It's hard to get that. So in some ways, you're protecting yourself in that way. Sometimes we're even skipping storyboard and going kind of straight to animatics because, now with like Makopi mocap tools, you can actually block out your scene and just, have it play out and have the director, your DP, kind of figure out where they want cameras and all that stuff. So it's just a mixed bag, like Craig said.
Alex, you like getting a storyboard before you get started?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the director a lot of times, whether they're going to do storyboards or not, and or the production company. I love getting hand-drawn storyboards, and they had hand-drawn storyboards for the last shoot. And the first version was just like really bad stick drawing, but I totally got it. I knew exactly what they were trying to get, and I was able to look at the storyboards and go, oh, this shot that they think we're going to do on the volume, we're not going to be able to do this guy. It was a good starting point to discuss, like, hey, look, you want to get this like top-down shot of this car, and that's cool, love it. Either it's full CG, which is possible, or it's a practical thing. And there was a part of one of the days that was practical. It's like, maybe you could get that shot practical. But it helped for us all to be on the same page. And for the director had never worked in virtual production before. And it was great for him because it was technology he's very familiar with, storytelling he's very familiar with, and then he can decide, and the production company decide, like, okay, maybe we just cut this shot. This is going to be more expensive than we thought. That was going to be easy. This is going to be expensive or difficult. Okay, we're just going to cut it. Or, yeah, we can capture this a different way. And there were several shots we found out, even from the early versions of the storyboards, where I was like, hey, guys, this is not a Simplates thing. This is a full CG thing. If you want us to bid on it, we can. But they already had a VFX guy, and I was like, I think this is probably more for Ryan. This is probably so he took those shots, and we took these shots. And so I'm a huge fan. And when I do my own things, a lot of times I do make my own storyboards, even if I'm not directing them, just so I have a sense of, like, what directions are we going to be looking? And our plates are 360, so it almost just doesn't matter, but it's still really helpful to go, like, okay, there's a lot of, in car process, there's a very standard set of plates that pretty much every director and DP want to capture. And it's good to sort of think ahead and look at, even from our own plates, to look at the plates from those perspectives and go, okay, well, this is going to be blocked by most of the vehicle. We're not really going to see in this area over here, but this part right here is really important. So I'm a huge fan of storyboards just in general. And I actually like hand-drawn, not too much work put into them, not the fancy, all that stuff, just hand-drawn, maybe what the camera moves are going to be. I'm a huge fan.
We have exactly 0 minutes and 0 seconds left. I wanted to talk about AI, but we're not going to have time. However, we're all going to stay here for a little while, so if you guys have any questions for us that relate to AI, my questions to the group for AI was going to be, how do you see the integration of AI, generative AI specifically, not process AI, to enhance or hinder your creative process in one way or the other as an artist? So that question will not be answered.
Can I go into negative 20 seconds?
Really quick, this is the networking break now coming up, so if anybody wants to go network, if not, you can do that one more question, I'd say. There's nothing else coming in.
Oh yeah, we have videos. Let's look at videos. Yeah, let's look at the videos. And then we'll talk about AI.
I thought I could get out of it.
Welcome to the home of fear and fright, where not all guests survive the night. The lucky souls will live to tell, and those who don't will rot in.
What's the matter with you? You can't say that. This is a family show. What are you doing?
Welcome, foolish Muppets, to tonight's very special Halloween challenge.
We just have to survive the night in this haunted mansion?
Everything here will seem familiar, but your eyes may deceive you.
It goes on for a while, and I don't think we have time. So, I'm glad that we ended with Muppets, because usually when I begin with Muppets, nobody cares about anything else I've ever done in my life. This is a movie that we shot, and this is the actual volume that we shot it on. About half of the movie was shot on this particular volume. It's very, very tiny. That's a 12 by 20 wall. That wall was the only one that was photographable. The rest, the other walls and the ceiling were rock and roll panels I brought in that were way too wide of a pixel pitch, but they were just there for the light. And that's really, for cinematographers, the most important thing about shooting on a volume, is you have a full volume of light. And that's actually the definition of volume. You have a full envelope of light, both top, bottom, sides, and behind you, to influence the foreground and the actual image that's in the taking camera. This is another volume. Volumes come in all shapes and sizes. This is sort of a medium. I would say that's like the average size. I'm going to zoom through these real quick. This is another sort of average size volume, but you can get away with a lot with those. That's another Muppets project. This is one of the big boys. This is now the biggest one in North America. But you can definitely have you can have volumes that are too large, you can have volumes that are too small. And this volume is amazing. It's beautiful. It's the best volume around right now. But one of the issues that you have is that when you have a volume like this that's about 90 feet across, you have to have a virtual set that's also 90 feet across. Because the reason being that when something in the virtual world is at the wall in the physical space, It's a 1-to-1 scaling. So 1 foot equals, on the wall equals 1 foot in real life. Anything in the virtual world that's inside of that will scale too large. Anything that's in the virtual world that's beyond that wall will scale properly on camera. So that's really important. So you wouldn't go here to shoot a typical office building or an apartment or an operating room, because again, your virtual set has to be 90 feet wide in order to work on a volume like this. So just to say that there's lots of different forms of walls and volumes and reasons why you would or would not shoot on them. This is another one I'll do the QR code didn't make it. Another one real quick I'd like to talk about. Noah and I did an article December 2021 about issues with the light that's emitted from RGB panels. This is really important because, as you can see here, there's 3 very narrow spiky bands in the spectrum right there. So that means there's no information in there and on the end. So what that does is it creates lobster skin in particular. You see how her skin is super reddish? You can see it in real life too. It's immediately evident once you walk inside of a full volume where you're getting this RGB light only. And especially the reds and the warm colors, they tend to shift dramatically. So these are reasons why you have to test and why you also have to light. You can let the volume do the heavy lifting of the light to get you into the blend and into the zone, but you have to mix that with traditional cinema lights in order to make sure that you don't have color shifts, and most importantly, skin tone, because that's the hardest thing to fix in post. And sometimes you can't even. So again, test, be aware of these things. This is a new iteration. Noah and I did another article in this month's American Cinematographer. These are new panels that are coming out or they already exist. This one is an RGB-CA panel. And what that does is you can see it's just filling in the spectrum in here. So that's what's coming. So these are a lot of the things that we encounter that are problems right now in virtual production are things that have an expiration date, and it's going to take a while because this stuff is expensive and hard and complicated to engineer. But a lot of these things it's moving really quickly.
Am I supposed to turn up here? Rick?
Turn right. Right. I missed it.
You missed it? Well, what now?
Okay, hold on. Whoa.
Wow. Impressive. Can you put on some music? Oh, it's our song. That's so sweet.
Oh.
Guess we deserve that.
You gonna pick that up?
So let me see. I think the next one's me too. Let's see. So that was shot at Orbital Studios last month. That was our. All the backgrounds were sim plates. That specifically was one specific sim plate, and hopefully you didn't notice it at all. If so, then we did our job. And this is some behind the scenes of what it looked like on set there. This is what they call Little Dipper. This is the smaller stage at Orbital Studios. You can see it's, even here, there's quite a production, a lot of stuff going on. And you can see the ceiling is a really, really important part of any car process. Getting reflections on that windshield, getting all that stuff perfect is tricky. It's very difficult to do. So the one of the interesting things about, because we're always learning things, but one of the things that I learned from doing this shoot was the consistency, because the plate is very consistent. We're driving the same speed, and you might think, oh, well, actually you would want variation, all those sorts of things. And I've been using traditional plates when I virtual production supervise and operate. I use both and everything else. Having that consistency is really great because the editor can just cut back and forth all day long. Different part of the shot, doesn't matter. It's going to match it. Lighting is going to match. The continuity is going to match. And we're starting to build a reference of not bad virtual production, but continuity issues when you shoot with traditional plates and you'll see this anytime you go watch a show tonight, you'll see it. They cut to their two shot of the actors, and they're driving there's a field behind them, and then they cut into close-up, and they're in a forest. They cut back, and they're in the field, close-up, forest. Back because either they're in a process trailer, and they were a different part of the road, or they're using traditional plates, and they were a different part of the plate when they shot it. And so that consistency, which at first, in my mind, was a weakness. It's like, oh, this is too CG, whatever. When you look at it through camera, you don't notice any of that stuff, first of all, because it's out of focus, and you're focusing on the actors. But that consistency is actually now one of the bigger. It wasn't even on my radar. Now it's like one of my top things of like, oh, this is actually really, really great. Do you want to? I think it's probably you. Oh, it's another.
Action.
Oh yeah, this is just
and camera. Great. 4, 3, 2, 1. Eli.
Yeah, that was it was more BTS. So, all right, here you go. And now it's forward to go forward, I think.
Okay. So this is just a photograph we took that isn't really, proper. You see all the lines and whatnot. But the reason I put this photo on here was because the thing about virtual production that you mentioned earlier is that physics don't matter anymore, and gravity doesn't matter anymore, and safety doesn't matter anymore because you don't have to be in front of an actual flame. So this is just kind of one of the fun little explorations of that. Also, we've started doing a lot of work with miniatures because CG is not always the right answer. It's just the answer that we move to too quickly. And so this is actually a 1-to-1 scale replica of the Millennium Falcon from the original Star Wars film. It's 5.5 feet long. And we actually had it at the Academy Museum alongside the Dijkstraflex. And a buddy of mine built it. So I said, hey, when that's done, can you bring it over? And let's see what we can do with virtual production. So, now we have all these beautiful robot arms that can do motion control and cameras that are really responsive. And so we said, well, let's figure out, how dynamic a shot can we create, using virtual production. And so that was kind of this experiment, which we've put out a couple of shots so far. But the idea being, don't throw away something just because it's old. This technology is probably the best there is as far as creating spaceships flying around, which is having a physical spaceship and lighting it properly. And then, add the LED volume to give you, the sort of realism in the back. So something fun.
So I think the only reason you had that picture is because that 35mm lens came from me.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yes, all my lenses come from you. And then this was just to show another use case where that's the small volume like you said before, but we actually had a whole football team in here. This was for the Madden 2025-24 cover shoot for Christian McCaffrey. So just a lot of different use cases for virtual production. And this was a photo shoot. Also, this, I think, was the last one I had, just to showcase that you can shoot film when you're doing virtual production. And in fact, this is a really interesting project that's going to come out soon, hopefully, where we were having to match 1934 film footage of an event that happened at Madison Square Garden, and it's black and white, and so we basically were recreating that, and we said, well, the best way to recreate is just shoot film, so that's it.
It's also scary as hell.
Scary. It was very scary. So there's a box that they now have developed for the camera that allows it to be gen-locked. And what's funny was we ran tests with the box and without the box because I was thinking some of the stuff that we've done at the stage may not make it necessary to have that box. So in both using it and not using it, we had no problems.
I talked to Linus about this exactly. He never uses a box. After First Man, that was the only time he used a box. But after that, everything he's done on an LED wall, he never uses a box.
Well, so Peter, the DP, the box broke.
And now you guys are out of the conversation.
Terrified.
It's just between the two of them.
Sorry. The box broke and they were terrified. And I said, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. And they were like, really? And I was like, yeah, it's going to be fine. And then it was fine.
All right, so I don't know if we have time for questions, but let's just give a big round of applause for our guests.